Most people who prefer homeschooling to conventional school do so because it provides them with the flexibility to focus on other activities like sports outside of their school curriculum. However, I have opted for homeschooling because it allows me to devote extra time to my studies. Nevertheless, I have also pursued some interests outside my regular academic curriculum. I made a documentary film to express my ideas about the impact of globalization. I have recently won a prestigious scholarship offered by India's leading newspaper, The Times of India. I also have a DELF certification in French, and I also have 5th grade certification for theory of music. All of this has been possible because of the flexibility that the Wolsey Hall curriculum has to offer. I was with Wolsey Hall for my IGCSEs as well, and now I'm currently doing my A-levels with them. What I like about the Wolsey Hall curriculum is that it divides up the subjects to be studied into smart modules and provides the relevant material and a very practical study plan. If you're able to follow the study plan and complete all your assignments on time, you can be sure to do well in your IGCSEs or A-levels. Wolsey Hall tutors are very experienced in their subject and understand what is expected of a high-scoring answer. They're also very helpful in nature and are quick to respond to any doubts that you might have in regards to the subject. I have set very high standards for myself. I want to study politics and economics at a great university like Oxford. My country, as well as other third world countries, have fallen victim to the adverse effects of globalization, especially finance capital. I want to study economics so that I can debunk the economic policies that are ruining our third world countries. My objective in life is to help build an economic paradigm which offers an alternative to neoliberal economics.